Hamburg, a lively metropolis in the north of Germany, and for many centuries a gateway to the world. A work of art with many different faces. The city is located at the water's edge, and the smell of the sea is in the air, even though the North Sea coast is situated some hundreds of kilometers from here. Hamburg's harbour is its lifeline and a popular tourist attraction. Germany's second largest city features several green spaces, canals and lakes, and provides a high standard of living. The harbour's history began 800 years ago, when in Nikolai Fleet the first harbour complex for the growing Neustadt was constructed. The harbour is at the heart of Hamburg's economy. Destruction during the Second World War and damaging storm tides have only caused temporary disruption to Germany's largest harbour. A trip around the harbour is a must. There are even steamboats to be found here. Eye-catching vessels that are usually only to be found on the Mississippi. Although known as a harbour city, Hamburg is located on the Elbe and is more than 100 kilometers from the North Sea. Due to its huge river, the sheltered harbour is accessible to large container ships. This is also a tidal region. More than 15,000 ships anchor here each year. 35 harbour basins are at their disposal, and around 46,000 people work in the harbour area. Today, the harbour covers an area of 87 square kilometres, and the latest technology ensures a smooth and efficient flow of international trade. A green ship with 3 masts, the Rikmas, lies at anchor. A museum ship that features the dramatic history of navigation. This windjammer was constructed in 1896 and was once the queen of the oceans. It is the only surviving cargo ship of those days and was built long before the arrival of today's massive container ships. These well-made boats were able to transport up to 3,000 tons of cargo and were the fastest sailing ships in the world. The windjammer's main mast was 53 meters high, and its sails had a combined surface area of an incredible 3,500 square meters. The Speicherstadt is part of the harbour. It's the largest warehouse complex in the world, crossed by canals that are known as fleets. In 1888, although Hamburg was connected to the German realm, its harbour remained duty-free. So the construction of huge storehouses became necessary. The Brook Islands were deemed to be suitable for this, and around 24,000 people were resettled. This was once what amounted to a city of warehouses, whose Gothic brick architecture with gables, pinnacles and Gothic arches created an extraordinary setting. Hidden behind many of the facades was the technology of the day, such as huge iron structures, hydraulic windlasses, and electric light. Coffee, tea, and spices were the most important trading goods that were scrutinized and dispatched by the owners of the warehouses. In the Speicherstadt Museum, there are old weaving machines and various other devices that highlight the Industrial Revolution that took place in the 19th century. The Speicherstadt is well worth a visit. The city of warehouses is crossed by numerous canals along which countless tons of cargo were once transported on small barges from the harbour. A boat trip on the fleets is a nostalgic adventure. From here, goods were lifted by windlasses to the upper floors. A total of 17 warehouses were built, each with 7 to 8 floors, and they provided a storage area that measured 330,000 square meters. The boat travels on the Elbe, crosses it, and then disappears into the confusion of the canals on the opposite side. Past huge container ships that are loaded and unloaded both day and night. This is one of the most important container harbours in the world and never goes to sleep. Returning to Speicherstadt, and the meaning of worldwide trade is clear, and why Hamburg is ideally placed for international shipping. The tower of St. Michaelis Church is lovingly known as Michel, one of the city's most famous landmarks. The church is one of the most beautiful Baroque buildings in the north of Germany. Its white, grey and golden interior is particularly impressive. The cantilever ceiling and magnificent acoustics of St. Michaelis are highly acclaimed and certainly add to its beauty. The splendid Ulster arcades are reminiscent of Italy. They were built in 1843 along the small Ulster opposite City Hall Square. Here, no matter what the weather, the people of Hamburg have an enchanting view of their city hall and Venetian landscape. City Hall highlights the power of the autonomous Hansestadt Hamburg. This impressive building is supported by 4,000 oak posts in the former swampland of the Ulster. The building is constructed of granite and sandstone. A relatively modest-looking building, an architectural combination of Renaissance, Baroque and classical design. Trade brought with it prosperity, and membership of the German Hansa ensured the necessary protection of the trading ships that belonged to Hamburg's many trading families. The left wing contains the large hall of the Bürgerschaft that is similar to a parliament. Here, it has always been possible for the public to observe the meetings of their representatives from balconies and wooden galleries. The City Hall contains 647 rooms, even more than Buckingham Palace. Each is furnished with precious wallpaper, wooden doors and fine paintings. Each work of art indicates the city's long history, from Danish rule to the German realm and also Napoleon's occupation of the city. The first session of the Bürgerschaft is also featured. The quantity of white frills indicated status. The gallery that contains paintings of the Burgomaster leads to the right wing of the City Hall. The Senate meets in the Ratsstube under the chairmanship of the Burgomaster in private session. The spacious festival hall is decorated with large wall paintings that feature the history of Hamburg from primeval times to the Middle Ages and right up to the present day. In the 13th century, the Ulster was dammed, thus creating a 180-hectare lake that still exists, the Binnen Ulster. In around 1665, the city fathers designed tree-lined pathways and refreshment rooms at the water's edge. Since the 19th century, various luxury hotels have flanked the tranquil banks, and fine buildings such as the Hamburger Hof contain a number of exclusive shops. The Jungfernstieg is a noble part of town. The Ulster steamers set off from here. The captain is ready to depart. A canal trip with the small ships of the White Fleet travels across the dammed-up Binnen Ulster, beneath Lombard Bridge and across the Außen Ulster. Next, it continues along serene canals, past various buildings and old factories that are no longer in use. The narrower and calmer the canals, the more muddy is the water. Rowing clubs and boat hire companies flank the green banks of the canals. The Außen Ulster is a unique water system within the city. It's a complete network of canals, although not all of them are navigable. With 2,428 bridges, Hamburg has more than Venice, Amsterdam and London put together. It is rightly known as the Green City on the water. Germany's second largest city features several well laid out parks, canals and lakes, and provides a good standard of living. It was here that, more than a century ago, the city's rich ship owners built their white villas and splendid gardens. The Ulster is the city's main leisure area and attracts a large number of sightseers. On the periphery of the city is Övelgönne, that is situated on the banks of the Elbe. Once fishermen and ship's pilots lived here, and it now boasts a museum harbour. A number of restored ships are the pride of a private organisation that preserves old commercial sailing ships, including an icebreaker, a floating crane, and a steam tug. Each of these lovingly restored vessels is a fascinating sight. and some can be hired for corporate events. Here, the life of bygone times can be relived. The citizens of Hamburg are fond of their historic steamships. A little further on and we reach the Blankenese, or Light Nose, once a settlement for ship's captains on the banks of the Elbe. Today, this idyllic area has developed into Hamburg's elegant West End, in which rural pursuits, fine residences and southern flair combine. And those who look out romantically across the Elbe perhaps have a longing for faraway places. On the 1st of July 1877, the Park Friedhof Ohlsdorf, that is located in the north of the city, was inaugurated. It is the largest cemetery in Europe, and after Chicago, the second largest in the world. This 400-hectare complex was created by Wilhelm Cordes, who created it according to English garden design as a cemetery that was also a work of art. Numerous old gravestones and more than 800 statues decorate many of the cemetery's 320,000 graves, a reflection of the city's history. Many important people from the world of politics, finance and art have found their final resting place here, an oasis of eternal peace. In 1907, Karl Hagenbeck opened an animal park that was revolutionary for its time. A 25-hectare park landscape for wildlife. Today, around 2,500 animals live here, in what is a specially created habitat of artificial mountains, canyons and pools. Hagenbeck wanted to separate the wildlife from visitors not by fences, but by invisible ditches beyond which the animals could live in a natural environment. In addition to an Asian landscape with numerous ponds, there's also an African savanna, a canyon of lions, a South American complex, and also a Japanese island, plus a land of dinosaurs. Hagenbeck succeeded in featuring indigenous wildlife side by side with the exotic, and in introducing distant habitats to the city. Hamburg doesn't have a zoo, but it does have Hagenbeck. The museum village of Volksdorf in the north of Hamburg is part of an actual old village. 3 of its houses are on their original site, which is not usual for most open-air museums. The complex provides a good insight into the rural life of old. It's an original Hamburgese forest village with farm buildings, a smithy and a barn. It also features domestic animals, natural meadows, a herb garden and beehives. St. Petri is the oldest of Hamburg's 5 main Protestant churches, although the present building dates back to a devastating fire in 1842. The huge brick building was completely destroyed and later rebuilt according to neo-Gothic design. The remains of the medieval foundation walls were integrated into the newly renovated church building. Originally, all the buildings were brick built, but today the city is dominated by steel and glass. Imaginative constructions decorate the Kontorhaus district, and its characteristic office buildings are reminiscent of ships. The Molenhof, Chilihaus and Sprinkenhof are the sumptuous quarters of many of the city's most successful merchants. Artistic examples of power and prosperity are to be found everywhere, and finally the results of great wealth. The large park complex Planten und Blumen, which means plants and flowers, is another idyllic recreation area within the city. From 1863 until 1930, this area along the city's old fortified complex contained Hamburg's first zoological gardens. Alfred Brehm was the director of the zoo. He wrote a famous zoological work, Brehms Tierleben. However, the zoo was subsequently transformed into a botanical garden that contained the largest Japanese garden in Europe, as well as a medicinal garden and a rose garden. A paradise of garden design. Several international horticultural shows take place here, and the flower beds change colour according to the seasons of the year. It's a relaxing place where nature can be enjoyed at close quarters. Annually, on the 7th of May, the Hafengeburtstag is celebrated. People from all over the world gather within the galleries of the landing stages to celebrate a huge harbour festival, along with the people of Hamburg. From the Speicherstadt to as far as the fish auction hall, there are around 500 stalls, a multitude of culinary delicacies, and several stages that feature various live performances. In the unique atmosphere of the harbour, when the weather's good, it's a perfect place to celebrate. Next, the boat displays begin, a reminder of the real reason for this festival. On the 7th of May, 1189, Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa gave Hamburg the right to be a duty-free area, and also the right to trade freely on the lower Elbe. It was then that the real prosperity of the city began, and vast wealth gained from trading went from strength to strength. Immigrants also helped in this success. In the 16th century, many Dutch Protestants fled from religious wars to Hamburg. Portuguese Jews and French noblemen followed. A multicultural society was formed, and they all had one goal in mind: to prosper from international trade. The former Hansestadt was transformed into a modern metropolis. Its unique character has survived, the smell of the sea, and a prosperous way of life. Hamburg, the green city on the water, gateway to the world, a European harbour that contains the spirit of distant lands.